Thank you for attending today, and I will turn it over to our presenters.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Let me get my slide here going. So I'm Jody Burns. I'm a National Curriculum Specialist for Edgenuity. I'll let Leticia introduce herself when we get to her part of the presentation. My background is teaching middle school and high school English here in Oklahoma, in Moreland, in Olive, and then my last 5 years were in at Frontier, north of Stillwater. I live in Stillwater. I'm a National Curriculum Specialist for Edgenuity, so I do a lot of presentations around the country. Of course, from my living room right now, but around the country. And we're really excited to have Leticia with us as the principal for the Oklahoma Youth Academy Charter School. So there was a poll question that came as part of the session. And if you haven't had a chance to answer that, we really appreciate your feedback. So far, this is kind of what we're seeing. The main areas that's you're seeing for student stress, anxiety, depression, how you want to expand that SEL support for students and educators. So we'd love to see a more feedback about that if you have a chance to do that. Today, we're going to look at just quick intro and research behind SEL efficacy, talk about the 612 Purpose Prep in the Edgenuity Learning Management System, the K5 Purpose Prep. Leticia uses the 612 piece with the Oklahoma Youth Charter School. And so she's going to share how she has, like the process she's gone through with that. And then we'll have at least 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. So that's our plan for our time together. I'm sure most of you know that before COVID, 72% of students reported anxiety and depression as a major problem. And since COVID, the children's mental health emergencies have just skyrocketed up 300%, according to Ed Week. And of course, that affects us as teachers and administrators and parents and aunts and uncles and people that care about kids. So as a company, Edgenuity partnered with Purpose Prep for about a year before we purchased them. And we really found how important social emotional learning can be to really meet the needs of that well-rounded, educated child. Research says that even as much as 2 decades later, students who have higher SEL skills are still less likely to be involved in criminal activity, less likely to struggle in the areas of mental health and employment, education, or substance abuse. So I think that's really exciting to know that with higher SEL skills, that can affect their lives for almost 20 years. The short-term results are also pretty exciting. We're seeing that strong SEL support generally has given us lower absenteeism, as much as 15%, and about 73% fewer suspensions. So that means students are in school. And if they're in school, then they can learn. So I really like that we've got those statistics that are long-reaching as well as shorter. And then as a society, for every dollar we spend now, we'll save as much as $11 later, whether that means someone doesn't have to be incarcerated or Department of Human Services doesn't have to be called, whatever the situation. If we invest our dollars now, then that will make an impact later, not just on the lives of people that are affected, but also on our taxpayer dollars. So we're going to take just a quick look at the 612 piece. I'm going to turn off my video because I found that if I try to stream video and myself, sometimes that can cause delays. So let me turn that off. I do want to show you that we have 9 courses that were designed for prevention. So this is really more helping students to get ready for things life might throw at them. The top 3 are brand new: restorative practices and principles, trauma-informed living, and climate and culture transformation. Excuse me. We introduced those just right after, like in November, after kind of we saw what we needed to add to our library because of COVID. And the other 6, the bottom 6, are going to be ones that we've had for a couple of years. Notice each course has 4 units. Each unit has 20 lessons. Every lesson has a video. So for every single course, that's 80 videos and lessons, and that's over 700 total for our library of content. Purpose Prep really deals with the 12 pillars of human development theory, and I pulled those out so you can see those a little better. We have made this PowerPoint available as a PDF. in the conference app, but I will upload that to the chat when Leticia gets started. I want to make sure everyone was in before we uploaded those. So you will have this PowerPoint that you can reference in a PDF form, as well as a couple of flyers that will talk about the 612 and the K5 piece. Notice how those 12 pillars of human development range from everything from social emotional learning and character education to college and career readiness, mental health and wellness, restorative justice, entrepreneurship. So just about anything that students need help with, we can meet those needs. And then everything is CASEL aligned. So our courses are aligned to all 5 of the CASEL competencies, and we have documents that show which of those competencies each lesson will meet. The goal is really to help students before they need intervention. We do have intervention modules as well, and we'll talk about those in a little bit, but the goal is to help them develop productive attitudes, pro-social behaviors, a deeper understanding of their own personal development. You can see in this example that the young man from the Restorative Practices and Principles course is talking about restorative justice. And I appreciate his positive approach to it. And he talks about how labels should not be a part of how they define themselves. So let me show you just a little bit from that lesson.
The labeling theory is the idea that we take on the labels that others put on us and the labels that we put on ourselves. Once we do that, then we are the bad decision, we are the bad choice, instead of separating that from ourselves.
I love that, keeping that label separated from who they are. And again, everything is video based. We know viewers retain 95% of the message when they watch it on a video, only 10% when they read it in a text. My freshman age nephew goes to YouTube as his search engine. I go to Google, I type it in, I read something. He goes to YouTube, types in what he's searching, and watches videos about it. So I just think it's much more appropriate for them because that's what they're used to seeing. Have over 100 experts across a wide range of walks of life, throughout the United States, different ages, different ethnicities, different religions, and they've all faced some form of adversity, and they share how they've overcome that, which gives students ideas about how they can make those same changes and impact their own lives in similar positive ways. We're going to take a look at a short clip from a lesson by Shema Mustafa. She is a teacher, an author, and mother of 5. And this comes from the course about, look here, the Climate and Culture Transformation course. So let's take a look. This lesson is part of the series on diversity.
A story I can remember is when I took my children to Disneyland, and we were waiting on a roller coaster ride or something. You know how you have to wait for like an hour to get into the ride. And we were in line, and my oldest daughter, Ayat, at the time was 12, 13 years old. We were making small talk with the people in front of us, and the lady asked her, she said, well, where are you from? She said, I'm from Michigan. And the lady told her, no, where are you really from? And she said, well, we're from like Dearborn Heights. It's a small suburb near Detroit, Metro Detroit. And she goes, no, where are you originally from? I didn't know this conversation happened until after we had went back to hotel. I was kind of feeling lonely, down and kind of upset. And I asked her, what happened? She goes, well, I was having small talk with this lady at the roller coaster. She was with her father at the time in that line. And I said, well, what upset you? She goes, that no matter what I kept on telling her, I'm from this state and I'm from this city, she kept pressing no, where are you originally from? Because of the hijab. And I said, Aya, do you think you're American? Do you consider yourself American? And she said, no. I said, what constitutes being an American? And she said, well, you have to be blonde and you have to have blue eyes. I said, well, Aya, do you know you were born in Beaumont? That's in Dearborn, that's in Michigan, that's in the United States of America, which makes you a United States citizen. You're an American. She said, well, no, I don't look like them. And I said, Ayat, you have to understand that American is defined as so many different races and colors and religious backgrounds. And for me, it was kind of like a shocker. Here I am, an American educator, educated in the United States of America, bachelor's, master's, working on this PhD, and yet my own child doesn't think she's an American. So that was a wake-up call for me. It was a wake-up call for me to educate my own children, my own family, and the people around us, that diversity matters, it's important, and to appreciate everyone's differences. I hope next time you see someone who looks different than you, whether they're wearing a hijab or a yarmulke or, they're dressed a certain different way, that you take a look at them and you appreciate their difference and respect that.
Now, I appreciate how at the end, the experts always have a challenge for students, and you can see these are pretty short. We average about 3.5 minutes. That one was a little bit shorter than that. I want to show what it looks like in our Edgenuity LMS. We're going to look at the College and Career Readiness course. And so if you're familiar with Edgenuity, you'll understand kind of what you're seeing here, but the student is in their course map for College and Career Readiness. Over on the left, you can see her whole scope and sequence. And so here are the 4 units. We're in the life skills lesson.
So how can you be an artist?
Whoops, let me go back to that. And then notice that she's already gone through household basics, the art of negotiation, staying safe and healthy, moving out. And so the last lesson here, the last part of this lesson is the art of conversation. I think that's interesting that sometimes, students might text each other if they're sitting right next to each other. So just being sure to be able to talk to each other is the last part of this life skills lesson. So let's take a look at this video.
So how can you be an artist with your words, and how do you create art out of conversation? The key to conversation is actually just being interested in other people. So if you meet somebody and you start asking them about themselves, they'll start talking. In general, people like talking about themselves. So the key is to ask really good questions and lean in and be interested. The second thing is, dig in and try to figure out what their happy thought is. If you ask them, hey, tell me about your family, tell me about your job, it'll only take a little bit before you see somebody start to light up. Grab that thing that makes them light up and put an air hose in it and just blow it up.
I'm going to pause for a minute and point out some of the features that are tools available to help students. They can take e-notes as the expert is talking, and they can save those and access them later. They can go into the glossary and type in any word they need help with and get that definition right there. They can click on the transcript to copy and paste into their e-notes, or if you've turned on the translation option, they can translate that into 62 different languages. So my student has translated this to Spanish, and then she's going to have it read aloud to her with that text-to-speech option, where she has 3 different speeds to choose from.
Entonces, la clave es hacer preguntas realmente buenas, inclinarse y estar interesado.
So there are 7 languages that can be read aloud to students. Let's convert that back to English and finish up the lesson here.
That is the art of conversation, because the more that you care about the thing that person cares about, the more they're going to like you. And not only the more they're going to like you, you're actually going to like the conversation too. The challenge for you is, how can you be more interested versus being more interesting?
After every video, then the student just clicks the little arrow to get to a check on learning that's automatically graded. We're really just making sure that they're understanding the big ideas of those videos. If they get it wrong, they get some feedback and get a chance to try again. So again, this is graded by the program to give you that feedback. Now, the last part of each lesson is this call to action. And for this particular one, we've got some questions for students, and then they can type their answers in there. I'll show you where you access those answers here in just a minute. We do have a lot of supports for teachers. There's a scope and sequence document, a syllabus, that CASEL alignment that we talked about. There's a facilitation guide that helps teachers understand the difference between teaching a class and facilitating conversation. And I know most of you are saying you're using this with as a counselor. So definitely this would just be probably something you already know. But if you wanted to incorporate that with some of your teacher friends who seem like they would be interested, it's certainly a good way to help them and feel more comfortable in that role. There's a purpose pledge that tells students kind of what their goals are, what we're trying to help them to do, to choose to embrace their purpose, to change and grow, to honor everyone, to be inspired, to be free, trustworthy, basically choosing to be a better human. And then there's also a list of questions for each one of the videos. So you can see we're in the art of conversation here. Here are the 3 questions for that video. I've just copy and pasted that into the collaboration corner, which is where I can put my questions. I use exactly what was on the page. How much do you talk about yourself when talking to others? How much do you ask people about themselves? What do you think about people who only talk about themselves? Now, my student Dakota can read what Lexi wrote. Sometimes I get so passionate about a topic, I forget to ask others their opinion. I will be more conscientious about that in the future. Dakota herself says, I'm shy. I would rather text than talk. I'm good at listening, but I'm not great at asking questions. I don't mind when people talk too much because that means I can just listen or look at my phone, which I appreciate her honesty. And I found that students really do share from their hearts. But if she ever decides she wants to edit that, she can always click the little pencil and change that. So that's great for more of an asynchronous discussion. Obviously, our teachers also and counselors have done synchronous. I'm sorry, I got those backwards. That's the synchronous discussion via the classroom or the web, as you can see here. Mr. Smith is asking his students to comment about what they've watched. So there are many different ways that you can utilize those discussion questions. Now, at the end of each unit, there's a wrap up, there's an assessment and reflection. So in this case, we're asking them to read these questions here, the 3 of the 8 points that Margaret Steen makes, and then look at that article and make some comments about it. And they can always have that read aloud to them if you turn on that text to speech option there. So that's something that would be up to you just in the student's profile. The quiz is just 5 true false questions over that unit to make sure they're getting the big ideas. And then the mentor activity is asking them to go to a positive adult, a parent, a guardian, a mentor, ask them questions and then share their own thoughts and jot those down. So of course you don't have to use all of these things. You can take out what you don't want or just pull in some things if you want to use those. Anytime a student writes, then on your dashboard as an educator, you would see this alert. So it's telling me Dakota has written about her college and career readiness class. I can just click that and see exactly what she said and give feedback to her, either written or I can record my voice giving feedback to her. So lots of different ways to interact with students. As I mentioned, we do have intervention modules. So we've pulled from those courses things for students who need help right now. They're in a crisis mode and they may need some intervention that's focused for things like anxiety or depression, maybe managing stress and emotions. We've seen a lot of need for coping strategies right now, helping students to bend but not break during the pandemic. A whole series on substance abuse, including vaping and juuling. We found that students often think that vaping or juuling is healthier than smoking and helping them to see that it's very detrimental for their health as well. So that's just a quick look at 612. For K5, it's a little bit, as you can see, more age appropriate for those students. We have the K2 Feelings Factory, the 3rd through 5th grade, Transforming My Emotions. And we have these little sparks. They're emotion partners. They help students to recognize emotions, understand, discuss, and regulate them. So we hear students say, I'm just Izzy today. They're just relating to the sadness of Izzy, or I feel so Chow, because they look at Chow and they think about on days that they're happy. So they're really identifying with these characters. And those are the 6 basic emotions. We help them to be able to identify those first. And then as they expand, we'll add advanced emotions. And a student finds out that, if they're feeling frustrated or humiliated, that is anger. And if they know how to deal with anger, they can deal with that more advanced emotion as well. As we continue to progress, we add more complex emotions. So now we're looking at things like they're provoked or they're ridiculed or they're betrayed or they're jealous. All of those go back to anger. So when students feel comfortable handling those 6 basic emotions, they can then learn to handle those advanced and complex emotions as well. And that's really the goal we have, is to help them identify that core emotion and know how to deal with that. So we do provide, I just wanted you to be able to see this a little closer. We're going to look at an example from fear. So notice things like rejected and inferior and worthless. That all goes back to fear. So these are the things that we provide for counselors and teachers who may need some supports. We actually provide a lot more supports at the elementary level. Lesson plans, video lessons, printable activity sheets that students can fill out. Here's the one with the wheel. And we're getting into those advanced emotions, helping them to fill that out, helping them to answer questions on love, things that I do well, actions that make me proud. So just different worksheets that they can use, and then age appropriate routines and guides. So here's for the younger kids, this routine about teaching learners to have safe and socially aware discussions. They're holding the ball. We're talking about the face game. Maybe for the older students, a circle conversation where they share their name and their emotion, and then they start to really get into some of those deeper things, why they feel that emotion, how they're going to change it, or if they don't want to change it. If it's a positive emotion, then this is what I want to feel. So just helping them have those conversations. There are some assessment questions. We provide pictures, like is he happy or sad? Which picture expresses fear? And then what's the opposite of fear? Well, peace, as we know. So helping them look across that circle to find that opposite emotion. So the teacher resources here, as well as lesson plans and things like that, we have the CASEL Alignment. So you can see for this one where each of those videos falls in that, those CASEL competencies, and then those routines that we talked about, really helping you or teachers to be able to decide, what routines would work best for their students. Also, we have these classroom posters. And so there's 5 groups. Each group has one for all 6 of the emotions. You can see here, we're just kind of focusing on fear today. Here's the one that shows those words in the complex and advanced wheel. And then these are also completely available in Spanish. So we provide these to you as a PDF, and then you can print them at your discretion. There's no cost for the PDF. It's part of the program, and you can have those available to either have in little handouts or maybe make big posters to put up on the walls of your room or even in the hallways. So we're going to end by letting you see an example here from a lesson. We also have experts at the elementary level that are middle and high school students. We know how much elementary students look up to those kids, and they've been elementary students not that long ago. So this is Landon. He's a middle school student. He starts his discussion about what to do when you're afraid by saying, when I was younger, I was afraid of roller coasters. And then I went on one with my mom, and it was a really good experience. So here's how he wraps up that experience.
What are you afraid of? What can you do to face that fear? Are you afraid of getting a bad grade on a test? Are you afraid of people making fun of you? Are you afraid of roller coasters like me? Whatever it is, remember what I said. Think of happy thoughts. Turn to someone you can trust and tell them to give you advice, and I'm sure they will. Face that fear until you can shed light on that. Remember, the opposite of fear is peace. At the end of that roller coaster, I felt peace. The next roller coaster I went on, I wasn't afraid anymore. I just felt peace. I enjoyed it. I knew I defeated my fear. Face your fears because you have a purpose.
I love that. So that's the quick wrap up. I'm going to turn it over to Leticia so she can introduce herself and talk about how she's used it with Oklahoma Youth Academy. And I'll upload to the chat those documents that I promised you. So Leticia, all yours.
Thank you, Jody. Again, my name is Leticia Sanchez, and I am the principal of Oklahoma Youth Academy Charter School. Let me give you a little history about where we've come from as far as Oklahoma Youth Academy Charter School. We are a charter school that has been developed for the Office of Juvenile Affairs. They are, the charter school is specifically for those students that have been adjudicated by the courts in the state of Oklahoma and have been placed in a detention treatment facility. So currently we have 2 of those facilities in the state of Oklahoma. We have one in Tecumseh and we have one in Manitou, Oklahoma. And so what we do is we have these boys. Right now we have boys. We have had girls in the past, but currently we just have boys. And these boys have, like I said, been adjudicated by the courts. And so they come to us and we, with many deficits in education-wise, and of course, so much to be said about the deficit that they have with regard to social emotional learning and being able to deal with those emotions. And so we have had, before COVID, we've had actually Edgenuity for 3 years. I think we're going on 4 years of having Edgenuity as our online curriculum. The kids use that with their Chromebooks. They each have a Chromebook, and they are able to then work on Edgenuity with the school, with the teachers, facilitating along the way with them. We also have the SEL component, social emotional learning, and we added that a couple of years ago. And so I've had many ups and downs with it and have learned so much, and will continue to use this program. As you are probably aware, with kiddos that have been adjudicated by the courts, we have them as young as 13 years old up to, they can stay with us until they're 19. And so we have them with we have a lot of kids that have gone through serious trauma and have therefore inflicted trauma on others as well. And so I felt like the SEL component was a very crucial part to our curriculum and success to our program. And so we began to use it. And what I first started doing was thinking, okay, I will make that a class, and we can just start working on some of these areas that we identify with these students that they need, because a lot of the times they're not able to get working on our curriculum and their credits when they've got so much emotional issues going on first and foremost. So I realized that we needed to deal with that first, or along with the regular curriculum. And so we began to try to run these programs, and these videos that Jody talked about are wonderful. They have so many different, there's just a plethora of different topics and things that we can always find one that will relate to them. But one of the things that we felt that we ended up kind of transitioning to was that we realized that these students better learn from someone that they trust. And so we have now gotten to where we use the teachers that students are a little closer to, or they have learned to trust for whatever reason, and we use them to be the tool to send them through or take them through these SEL components. So it may include going through a class together, just kind of sharing this, like Jody mentioned, sometimes it's when they're in the midst of a meltdown of sorts, that's the time, and so we use a certain one for that. But it is then administered by the teacher. So we also use, which is extremely beneficial, is ICAP. Through ICAP, we use a lot of the career and college and career programs that they have in SEL, and that has just worked wonderful, because transition, of course, is important to all the high school kids, but in this case, and in our case, it almost is a success. It actually shows whether or not they're going to be successful when they leave our program and hopefully go out there and our goal is for them not to reoffend, obviously, or end up in prison. And in some cases, unfortunately, some of these juveniles that leave us may end up dead on the streets if we don't change their path. And so we use the ICAP and the transition immensely, because we feel like we've got to show them the hope and the path that there is some success when they leave us. And so we use the SEL as well. After COVID hit, we were able to, because we had Edgenuity and an online curriculum. Of course, these boys are in a detention facility, and so they're there with us. That's where they live. So we were able to continue our education about a year ago. We went virtual, so the kids could continue having their Chromebooks. They would be on Edgenuity, and then I would set up a Teams computer there where they were at. And the teachers would be able to continue to work with them, virtually. That did put a little hindrance on our SEL program. I think it suffered a little bit because we didn't have that one-on-one. It was a little more difficult, obviously, to chat with a kiddo one-on-one. And so what I did during that time is I used the SEL programs and the messages and the many lessons that we have. I used it for training for our teachers, because I felt like it was important for our teachers to be able to understand the concepts, so that sometimes it may not be that you have the time to deal with the kiddo and show the whole program, but if you're aware of some of those things, then you can deal with them on a one-on-one basis when something is happening, or I just felt like if the teachers were more informed of the content that was in there, then they could put it to use when they saw that it was most effective. And so we have been able to work, get a lot more training for the teachers and go through that huge library that Jody talked about of resources that we have. So we use our time to do that. Our future plans and what we're hoping to do is to continue, of course, our teacher training. I'd like for it to grow to become an elective class. Unfortunately, we do not have a counselor per se. We all need to be counselors ourselves in the school, but we don't have one that's just assigned to that. But I would hope to do so in the near future so that we could, have a class that is just running these kids through that. A lot of our kids that we have, like I said, they're trauma, they're gone through severe trauma. They've been adjudicated from different crimes, from doing, selling drugs, armed robberies, to sex offenders, to also, those that have actually committed murder. And so you can just begin to see the walls that we face with that. But we have seen a lot of success in working with these kids as far as breaking down that barrier with them, developing that trust with a teacher or a school staff member, and then working our SEL program in with it. And we have had some really good success. Any questions, thoughts? I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
I thought I'd mention, as a high school English teacher, I would love to have had this program. So like at Act 3, when Romeo kills Tybalt of Romeo and Juliet, what a great time to talk about anger and temper management, right? Or at the end of the play where they kill themselves, suicide is never the answer. I've always told my students, we can learn from the mistakes of others. We don't have to make these mistakes ourselves. So I think sometimes just helping, like you said, letting teachers know what's available and how you can incorporate that into whatever you're teaching can also make that a little more seamless. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Well, and we've actually been able to do that ironically in some of our math lessons. Most students do not come with the tools for math. They just struggle, for math. So
I relate to that comment.
Yes. I'm right there. That's what I tell them. I'm right there with you. So I totally understand. But it's interesting because they lose their temper, and just even what you were talking about, the emotional or the SEL portion of it for the lower grades, we could so use that with our kids, because our boys come in sometimes and their maturity level is very, very low. I mean, and so they could really relate to some of that at a very basic level. They don't know why they're angry. They don't know that it's frustration, or that it's, whatever it is that they're facing. And so just making them aware of that, that's the first step for them to recognize, okay, I need to do something other than toss the chair across the room. So yes, it definitely works. And I tell the teachers that let's look at ways, not just wait for a situation to arise, or just any emotion that comes across the table for whatever reason during one of your classes. Let's use SEL training, or what we've learned in SEL, and start helping them to recognize that that's what's going on, because I don't think they know that really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just want to kind of close before we get to questions with a video of a student who's talking about, how Purpose Prep really made a difference in his life. So let me pull that up here to share, and then we'll open it to questions right after that. So let me share my screen again. This is Xavier. He is, I think, a middle school student in Detroit, in an area of Detroit. If you're familiar with M&M and the 8 Mile area, that's where Xavier lives. His school was one of the first ones to use Purpose Prep across the curriculum, similar to what you're doing, Leticia. And, he's a little fidgety, as middle school students can be, but I really appreciate his heart as he shares what he's learned. So let me turn off my video so I'm not causing issues here, and we'll listen to Xavier.
Well, basically, it gave me a whole new perspective of my classmates, because I realized that I'm not the only one going through my problems alone. So basically, like all the beef that I have with people, it kind of went away, because I realized you going through stuff, I'm going through stuff. So instead of us fighting, why can't we just help each other out of the problem instead of making it worse for each other? Nobody likes to fight, all of that, because I done lost a lot of people to violence when it could have just been resolved in a quick conversation. Sometimes you just need to have that bond with your classmates, with your teacher, because you never, ever, ever know what's going on in somebody's life. None of that, because people don't talk no more. Everybody hide behind phones and social media. Last year we had an emotional conversation, me and my first hour class in Mr. Reyes' class. He opened up. I had already gone to him about personal things, but he opened up to the whole class, how he really was. A lot of my friends opened up to me. I finally figured out why people act a certain way they do, why people got the tough shell. I can never figure out why everybody wants to walk around all tough. It's because they never had a safe place to come and talk to other people. That's what the purpose did for us. It opened up our classroom. It gave us a bond.
That always gets me, because when he says I lost people to violence,
Well, basically,
he doesn't mean they moved, right? I mean, that's just unfortunately part of some of his reality. So if we can make a difference in lives like Xavier's, lives that you're touching, Leticia, just think of what a difference that can make, that ripple effect can be. So what questions do we have? Are there any in the chat here?
Okay, can we have a link to that video?
Well, you will have the recording, right? So that it will be on the recording to this piece here. So you will have access to that. We have videos on our website that you can access to, edgenuity.com. Just go look for Purpose Prep or social emotional learning. There are quite a few videos on there as well. Good question. What else? Do you have any questions for Leticia?
I would like to add, Jody, that just dealing with Purpose Prep through, SEL, through Edgenuity, you guys have been amazing. You guys, you have been an extreme support for us and have been able to be with any questions that we might have. And when we first started with the SEL, we're like, okay, how can you, any ideas? How do we get this started?
Yeah.
Guys may have not had the answer right then and there, but boy, if you found out or you heard something, you would definitely get back with us immediately. And so I can just say that was a wonderful support, and you guys being there with us all the time made a huge difference.
Great. I'm glad to hear that.
Appreciate that.
We are really known for our customer support.
Yes, do a wonderful job with that. That's for sure.
Thanks. I wanted to give you just information. If you want more information, Kate Baxter is our Oklahoma Account Executive. You can email or call her, text her for more information. And we have a whole team, even on the call today, that work with Kate and are part of her team as well. So definitely reach out to her. I put a couple of brochures in the chat and also available as part of the description for the session about the K-5 piece and the 612. So it gives you a little bit more of a handout that you can kind of take away with you. Sharon, do you want to add anything about the recordings or how they're going to access those?
That's a good question. And I'm probably not the one to answer it, but I do know we are recording all sessions and that you will be able to access those. So be looking for that. If you have any issues, you can definitely email us. My email is sharon.baker@careertech.ok.gov. And if you have any questions, I can help get the answers for those. Or AJ Kroll is another one, aj.kroll@careertech.ok.gov. I just want to thank you all, you ladies, for taking the time out to present.
One quick comment. There was a question about estimated cost. So I would ask you to reach out to Kate about that, to email her, let her know the size of your school, because we have different pricing for smaller schools and things like that. And she can give you a better idea. So that's how I would answer that question. Sorry, Sharon, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's good. Any other questions? We
saw that one.
Time.
You bet.
But we do really appreciate you ladies taking time out to present for us. And I would just like to say how much we appreciate all of our counselors. I know you're very busy and it's been a tough year, but we do appreciate you and all the hard work you do. And so glad that you took time out of your busy schedules to join For Counselors Only. So yes. I hope the rest of your year goes good. And if there's anything we can do for you, please be sure and reach out to us.
Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.